Okay, everyone, we are going to talk about existentialism. And of course, existentialism is something that they spend entire semesters talking about in college. So the majority of what we talk about is going to be grossly simplified. But first, let's look at this cartoon. This is Calvin and Hobbes. He says, let's say life is this square of the sidewalk. We're born at this crack and we die at that crack. Now, we find ourselves somewhere inside the square, and in the process of walking out of it, suddenly we realize our time in here is fleeting. Is our quick experience here pointless? Does anything we say or do in here really matter? Have we done anything important? Have we been happy? Have we made the most of these precious few steps? And then you see Calvin and Hobbes in the fourth box, looking sad, looking forlorn, looking lonely, looking contemplative about life. So we're going to come back to this cartoon and try and understand it from an existential lens at the end of our lesson today. So have you ever heard someone say that they're having an existential crisis? Perhaps someone has finished their TV series, as we can see in this cartoon on our right, and then they're like, oh no, what now? What do I do? This was my life. Or perhaps someone whose life is basketball or soccer all of a sudden gets injured and they can't play that sport anymore. If being an athlete gives meaning to your life, what do you do suddenly if you can't be an athlete? And so oftentimes we even hear, someone in their 50s say, I'm having an existential crisis. I don't know what to do. And so then they buy a new convertible or something. So these are all times that we've heard people maybe talk about having an existential crisis, moments when individuals question whether their lives have meaning, they have purpose, or have value. So let's look at the word existential. It has two words kind of smushed into one, and that's existence and essence. And so combining these two words tells us that an existential question is a question concerning the essence of what it means to be alive. So a few questions are, what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning or essence of existence? Who am I? What is my true nature or essence? What is my true identity? What is my greater purpose? How should I live my life? What is death? What happens when we die? If there's a God, or is there a God? And if so, what is her or his nature? Okay, so these are all questions people ask themselves when reflecting on what is existence? Why are we here? Who am I? So I want to think of existentialism like a duck. Okay, and this is kind of a weird way to think of it, but think of this duck. This duck does not cling to any values, any moral systems. It's not acting a certain way because God or his belief system is telling him to act a certain way. Similarly, society does not teach this duck what is good or bad. Maybe another duck sits on this duck's nest, and it's not society that tells this duck to act a certain way and say, hey, get off my nest. He doesn't have any sense of morals that are taught to him by society. This duck is not trying to find meaning in life. It's not trying to adhere or listen to society's rules, right? This duck is just living according to his or her own free will. It is just chugging along, doing duck things. It's not holding resentments. It's not holding grudges. It's not listening to what society or God or religion or whatever is telling him to do. This duck just exists. And so, what does being an existentialist believe? An existentialist believes that the universe does not have any natural or intrinsic meaning or purpose. Okay, that is human created. Human society is telling us to act a certain way. That is not something natural that the universe is telling us to do. Existentialists also believe that people must take responsibility for their own actions and shape their own destinies, create their own morals and values, and to stick with them. And so, as an individual, I shouldn't be listening to what society is creating, any value system that they're creating. I need to come up with my own morals. I need to make my own decisions, and I need to stick to my values. They believe in individual existence, freedom, and choice. Okay, so Jean-Paul Sartre, and I'm saying his name incorrectly, says, man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. Such is the first principle of existentialism. So if I say that I'm a duck who wants to protect my nest at all costs, then God help me, I'm going to be that duck, right? I have to create my own destiny. So just a little bit of background, and remember what we said about Albert Camus' life. He came of age, he grew up, his most formative years were during World War One, well, mostly World War II, the atrocities of World War II, but his life was affected by World War One because his father died in it. So we remember that that's when Camus' life was happening, and so he was greatly influenced by existentialism, because existentialism was born after Industrial Revolution, the rise of bureaucracy, religious skepticism after various wars, experiencing suffering and injustices, like I've mentioned, World War I and World War II. After all of these things, people started questioning, why are we here? What do I believe in? I think to put it one way is if someone is super, super religious, or if you believe in karma, you believe that God gives, rewards good behavior with good and bad behavior with bad. So that's karma and religion, right? And then all of a sudden, your whole town gets bombed. That is something that is just hard to stomach, quite frankly. And so people started having these big questions of what is there to believe in. And so I'm going to read this passage again by Sartre on existentialism. So the existentialist thinks it is very distressing that God does not exist, because all possibility of finding values in a heaven of ideas disappears along with him. Nowhere is it written that the good exists, that we must be honest, that we must not lie, because the fact is that we are on a plane where there are only people. Dostoevsky said, "If God didn't exist, everything is possible." That is the very starting point of existentialism. Indeed, everything is permissible if God does not exist. And as a result, man feels sad, abandoned, or lonely, because neither within him nor without him does he find any values to cling to. So this is essentially saying, all of a sudden, the world gets really scary because there are no values inherent to that one has to believe in. God doesn't exist to an existentialist. And I know for some of you that may be shocking, and you can totally reject this. This is just one belief, right? But people can feel sad, abandoned, and lonely when they have to create their own fate, and all of a sudden there are so many possibilities. It's overwhelming. So let's go back to this cartoon. Why do you think that Calvin and Hobbes, so the kid and the tiger, why do you think they look so sad, forlorn, contemplative, however you interpret their faces here? What is it about being that's a mistake. What is it about being having existential thoughts that makes someone feel this way? So now, as you're reading, I would like you to try and find evidence that Meursault is asserting his independence, his free will, not adhering to society's values or morals, not finding inherent meaning in life, and other interpretations of existentialism. Try and find them, and then we're going to have a big discussion in the next few classes about where you see existentialism within Camus' pages.